Imagine a man staring out the window of a high-rise office, his reflection barely visible against the rain-streaked glass. The world below buzzes with hurried footsteps and honking taxis, but inside his mind, a storm rages far more fierce. One thought spirals into a dozen. What if I fail this project? Will she leave if I can't provide? Am I even worthy of this life I'm chasing? He doesn't voice it. He buries it. And in that silence, the weight grows heavier until it threatens to crush him. This isn't fiction. It's the quiet epidemic facing millions of men today. In a world that praises stoicism and equates vulnerability with weakness, the man who thinks too deeply often becomes his own worst enemy, trapped in a labyrinth of introspection that few around him can see. The psychology of men who think too deeply isn't just an abstract curiosity. It's a lens into one of the most pressing mental health crises of our time. Men die by suicide at approximately 4 times the rate of women, a stark disparity that underscores how unexpressed thoughts can fester into fatal despair. Yet this overthinking, characterized by relentless rumination, existential questioning, and hyperanalysis, isn't always a villain. For many, it's the birthplace of profound insights, creative breakthroughs, and empathetic leadership. The catch? When societal pressures silence men's emotional outlets, deep thinking morphs from a superpower into a silent saboteur. Why does this happen more acutely in men? And what happens when the mind's depths pull you under instead of propelling you forward? Consider this. Research reveals that while women are more prone to verbal rumination, sharing worries to process them, men often internalize theirs, leading to compartmentalized overanalysis that builds like unchecked pressure in a boiler. This isn't mere speculation, it's rooted in evolutionary wiring and cultural conditioning. Traditional masculinity demands men man up, suppressing the urge to dissect feelings aloud, which funnels introspection inward. The result? A hidden toll, chronic anxiety, decision paralysis, and a higher risk of burnout. But here's the surprising fact that flips the script. Studies show that men who harness deep thinking, without letting it overwhelm, excel in problem-solving and innovation, often becoming the quiet architects of change in their fields. Why does this matter to you? Whether you're a man navigating these mental mazes, a partner witnessing a loved one's silent struggle, or simply curious about the human psyche, understanding this dynamic can bridge the gap between isolation and empowerment. In an era where mental health conversations are finally cracking open the taboo around male vulnerability, exploring the psychology of deep thinkers among men isn't optional, it's essential. It challenges the myth that real men don't overthink, they just do it alone. So I pose this to you. What if the thoughts keeping you up at night aren't curses, but clues to a richer life? What if embracing your depth rather than fearing it could redefine strength? In the pages ahead, we'll plunge into the theories, stories, and strategies that illuminate this terrain. From Freud's iceberg of the unconscious to modern neuroscience on neural pathways, we'll unpack how men's minds are wired for depth, and why that wiring sometimes shorts out under pressure. Buckle up, this journey into the male mind's undercurrents might just save a life. Yours or someone you love. At its core, deep thinking in men manifests as a cognitive style marked by introspection, pattern-seeking, and a relentless pursuit of meaning. Unlike superficial processing, quick, action-oriented decisions, deep thinkers dwell in the why and what if, dissecting experiences layer by layer. Psychological theorist Daniel Kahneman, in his seminal work, Thinking, Fast and Slow, distinguishes System 1, intuitive, effortless, from System 2, deliberate, analytical thinking. For many men, deep thinking defaults to System 2 on steroids, exhaustive, effortful, and often exhausting. But when does this cross into too deeply? The threshold lies in rumination, a repetitive focus on negative emotions or problems without resolution. Coined by Susan Nolan Huxema, rumination theory posits that this cycle amplifies distress, particularly when it traps individuals in a feedback loop of self-criticism. For men, this rumination takes a gendered twist. Evolutionary psychology suggests that ancestral roles, hunters requiring spatial and strategic foresight, primed male brains for compartmentalized, logical processing. Fast forward to today, and this manifests as problem-focused overthinking. Men don't just worry. They engineer escape plans from hypothetical disasters. Take Alex, a 35-year-old software engineer I encountered in a case study from a cognitive therapy clinic. Names changed for anonymity. Alex spent nights mapping out every possible failure in his code, not to fix it, but to preempt catastrophe. "It's like my brain's a chess master playing against shadows," he said. This anecdote echoes broader patterns. Men's deep thinking often masquerades as productivity, masking the anxiety beneath. Philosophically, this ties to existentialism. Thinkers like Kierkegaard and Sartre argued that humans grapple with absurdity, the void of meaning in a chaotic universe. For men conditioned to provide and protect, this void hits harder. Sartre's concept of bad faith, denying one's freedom through self-deception, resonates here. The deep-thinking man overanalyzes to avoid authentic choice, fearing the freedom it demands. In modern terms, Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life explores how men, burdened by responsibility, descend into chaos if unstructured, leading to over-intellectualization as a coping mechanism. Neuroscience offers a biological blueprint. Functional MRI studies reveal that men's prefrontal cortex, the hub for executive function and planning, activates more robustly during abstract problem-solving than women's, who show stronger connectivity in emotion processing areas like the amygdala. Testosterone, the male sex hormone, amplifies this. It boosts dopamine-driven focus but can heighten risk aversion when stress spikes cortisol, turning analysis into paralysis. A 2023 study in Frontiers in Psychology found that high testosterone men exhibited prolonged rumination under uncertainty, unlike their female counterparts who shifted to social coping sooner. Contrast this with gender norms. Traditional masculinity ideology, as outlined in Ronald F. Levant's work on the normative male alexithymia hypothesis, posits that men are socialized to disconnect from emotions, viewing them as feminine. Result: deep thoughts ferment unvoiced. In relationships, this breeds the overthinker's trap. Men dissect a partner's offhand comment for hours. "Did she mean I am inadequate?" While women might vent and move on. A Quora thread brimming with user stories illustrates this. One man confessed, "My girlfriend says I'm distant, but really I'm lost in a mental courtroom prosecuting myself." Case study. David, a veteran architect in his 40s, lost his job during the 2008 recession. Rather than network, he retreated into blueprints of what went wrong, sketching fault lines in his career that mirrored his childhood: absent father, pressure to succeed. Therapy revealed this as counterfactual thinking, a deep cognitive dive into alternate realities that, per Daniel Schachter's research, aids learning but spirals into regret when unchecked. David's turnaround? Journaling actionable insights from his depths, transforming rumination into renovation. Deep thinking's benefits shine in creativity and leadership. History brims with examples. Albert Einstein's thought experiments birthed relativity from solitary mental wanders. Steve Jobs' introspective walks fueled Apple's innovations. Psychologically, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's flow state, optimal experience through deep engagement, thrives in such minds, yielding peak performance. In teams, deep-thinking men often emerge as strategists, foreseeing pitfalls others miss. A Harriman International study notes that leaders who embrace depth handle stressors with resilience, turning contemplation into calculated risks. Yet the curses loom large. Overthinking drains cognitive resources per Nick Wignall's analysis. It offers illusory control, warding off helplessness, but eroding sleep, focus, and joy. For men, this externalizes subtly: irritability, withdrawal, or substance use as off switches. In romance, it foments doubt. Overthinkers replay arguments, assuming betrayal where none exists, straining bonds. Anecdote. Mark, a teacher, fixated on a student's criticism, convinced it signaled professional obsolescence. Months of insomnia followed, until mindfulness training reframed it as growth fuel. Philosophically, Nietzsche warned of the abyss gazing back. Prolonged depth risks nihilism. In men, this amplifies under hegemonic masculinity, where vulnerability is unmanly, per Raewyn Connell's theory. A Reddit confessional captures it. Overthinking is my fear dressed as wisdom, afraid to fail, so I preempt every loss. Enter practical psychology. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, targets rumination via thought records, logging distortions like catastrophizing. For men, acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, resonates. It honors depth while diffusing unhelpful thoughts, e.g., labeling worries as radiostatic rather than truth. Mindfulness, rooted in John Kabat-Zinn's work, trains presence. Apps like Headspace adapt it for bro-friendly sessions. Jungian analysis adds soul. The shadow self, repressed aspects, fuels overthinking. Integrating it through active imagination, dream journaling, fosters wholeness. Case Tom, a CEO, used shadow work to voice ambitions long buried, slashing his decision anxiety by 60% per self-reports. Socially, challenging norms. Men's groups like Movember foster deep talk circles, proving brotherhood heals. Evolutionary tweak? Channel hunter focus into hobbies, chess, hiking, where depth yields tangible wins. In sum, the main currents reveal deep-thinking men as wired philosophers in a pragmatic world. Gifted yet guarded. Insightful yet isolated. Through theory, biology, and tales, we see the path from peril to power lies in balance. Diving deep, but learning to surface. Delving deeper, the implications of men's over-deep thinking extend beyond the individual psyche, etching fault lines into families, workplaces, and cultures. At the personal level, chronic rumination correlates with heightened cortisol, eroding physical health. Think hypertension, weakened immunity. For men, this compounds gender-disparate outcomes. Lower therapy uptake. Only 25% of men versus 40% of women seek help. Per APA data, stems from stigma, amplifying isolation. Reflect. How many breakthroughs, like Newton's gravity epiphany under an apple tree, were born from such minds, yet how many geniuses perished unspoken? Societally, it perpetuates the strong silent type archetype, fueling toxic masculinity debates. Connell's hegemonic model argues this ideal marginalizes emotional men, yet data shows depth fosters empathy. Overthinkers often become advocates, dissecting injustices with forensic precision. Counterpoint. Feminist critiques like those in Bell Hooks' The Will to Change contend male introspection sidesteps accountability, turning inward to evade relational labor. Valid? Yes. Men's rumination skews self-oriented, per studies, unlike women's co-rumination. Debate rages. Is deep thinking a privilege of patriarchy enabling detachment or a subversion, quietly eroding it through self-awareness? In workplaces, it's a paradox. Deep thinkers excel in R&D. McKinsey reports analytical males drive 20% more innovations, but falter in agile teams, where over-analysis delays launches. Reflection prompt. Recall a project stalled by one more review. Was it caution or fear? Perspectives in tension. Optimism versus pathology. From a positive psychology vantage, Martin Seligman's PERMA model, positive emotion, engagement, etc., frames depth as engagement, a wellspring for purpose. Men channeling it like philosophers Marcus Aurelius, whose meditations dissected stoic depths amid empire, model resilience. Benefits? Enhanced moral reasoning. Kohlberg's stages peak in post-conventional thinkers, often male introverts pondering ethics. Pathologically, however, it's a siren. The deep thinker's paradox describes how excessive analysis breeds overwhelm, per Irina's essay. Introspection intended for clarity yields mental fog. Gender lens. Women's rumination, though higher, buffers via talk. Men's internalized risks explosion. Suicide's gendered shadow. Debate. Neurodiversity advocates argue it's not too much, but mismatched environments. ADHD autism overlaps amplified depth in men undiagnosed. Culturally, Eastern versus Western views clash. Buddhism's Vipassana celebrates mindful depth, dissolving ego via observation, antidote to Western Cartesian dualism, where thinking isolates the self. For men, this invites hybrid. Stoicism meets Zen, as in Ryan Holiday's modern takes. Personal application. Journal this. What thought loop serves you? What starves? A client's epiphany. My depth was armor. Shedding it revealed allies. Broader debates. Nature, nurture, and the future. Nature-nurture wars persist. Hormonal determinism, testosterone's analytical edge, versus socialization, boys shushed from tears, both hold water, but epigenetics suggests interplay. Stress alters gene expression, deepening rumination cycles. Future? AI therapy tailors interventions, chatbots probing depths without judgment, could democratize relief for stoic men. Debate. Does glorifying depth romanticize suffering? Critics say yes, echoing Nietzsche's suffering nobly. Optimists counter, reframed its evolutionary gold. Men's minds, once cave strategists, now global solvers. Reflect. In your life, does depth illuminate or obscure? Probe it. The answer might free you. We've journeyed through the shadowed waters of the male mind, from the neural sparks igniting deep thought to the societal chains binding it, and the liberating strategies to swim free. Key takeaways. Deep thinking in men is a double helix. DNA of genius twisted with risk of rupture. Rooted in biology and battered by norms, it gifts insight but demands vigilance against rumination's undertow. Remember, women may ruminate aloud, men, in silence, bearing fourfold the fatal cost. Yet harnessed, it forges leaders, lovers, legends. This matters because silence kills, quietly, profoundly. In a world thawing male stoicism, your depth isn't a defect. It's dynamite for change. So act. Journal one nagging thought today. Share it with a friend. Seek therapy if waves overwhelm. Resources like the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 988 in the U.S., await. What's your abyss whispering? Comment below. Connect in community. Together, let's turn thinking too deeply into living profoundly. Your voice might just light another's way.